Good morning. We'll call the June 24th regular council meeting to order. We've got an open microphone. I don't have anybody registered, so if there's anybody here to speak at open mic, let me know. Perfect. Looking for an approval of the agenda. One amendment, we need to take away 9.1. It's coming up at a future meeting. Aside from that, any other additions, deletions? Yeah, Councillor Nielsen.
Council approves the regular council meeting agenda as amended.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So 9.1 is struck from the agenda. We'll start off with some delegations. First up, we have Wetaskiwin Boston Pizza. So Christine and Justin, come join us up front, please. I think the mic is on.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could you adopt the minutes first?
Oh, why not? Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. See, it's fine.
Good to go?
Absolutely. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning, Mayor, Council. How are you today? Good. Just got some concerns of the parking or the development permit application just in the parcel north of the Boston Pizza. I'd just like to start by handing out a couple of forms to each member of council and the mayor as well. This was some concerns from the past in 2019 and 20. This was emailed out on June 27, 2020 to permits@wetaskiwin.ca, and no reply was given. That was from the former business owner of the Boston Pizza. His concerns to the parking really sit with us today with what we're looking at moving forward. That's all in the past, and we are where we are today, and we need to figure something out. The biggest thing, we don't have any opposition to construction being built in the area. We do, however, have an issue with the location of where it is, being the parking lot, right where a majority of Boston Pizza's guests and the Starbucks area and park at the moment. In the past, it was a beautiful landscape parking lot, which it stands today. It was developed in 2004 by the former owner of the Boston Pizza, and also leased for 14 years. Property taxes paid on the lot throughout, and maintenance and snow removal, all of that sort of stuff. In the past, there was, during the development of that lot, there was quite the controversy from the citizens of Wetaskiwin about the old oak tree or the trees that were in the area, and that oak tree was saved for a reason. We wanted to work with the city and the citizens during that time, and we did. Over all the years, we were held to a standard of bylaw when it came to developing Boston Pizza or growing it through a patio or an addition. And the biggest bylaw for that was parking stalls. And we fell short a few times, but we figured out a way. And today it seems that parking is amended, and it doesn't matter anymore where our guests park or if we have enough parking. Over the years, we have employed thousands of people, and the potential that this does have on the business can be very torrential and you know, can hit us quite hard. We could be looking at layoffs or you know, certain things like that if the guests have nowhere to park and choose to go elsewhere. Jobs could be at risk. Between Christine and myself, there's over 60 years in the business in Wetaskiwin, and I still have probably 25, 30, or even higher more to go. I need a job, and so does Christine, and so does a lot of the other people that work there. We've employed people not just from Wetaskiwin, but from Musquecheese, Millet, the surrounding areas, the county. The loss of sales, you know, could hit us really hard when it comes to that, especially a business that has put its heart and soul into the community and given so much back over the 40 plus years of being in business in Wetaskiwin. You know, loss of business due to the parking lot could mean loss of community sponsorship or giving back into the community. Organizations like the Wetaskiwin Icemen, Boys and Girls Club, WADAX, Wetaskiwin Heritage Museum, not to mention the sponsorships we provide to the outlying neighbors will diminish significantly. We've been a significant pillar to creating such events like the Wetaskiwin Air Show, summer games in the past, all that sort of stuff. And again, we're looking at potentially losing stuff like that. Also, I know that there was a proposed lot that would go on the northeast side, about 200, 250 yards away from the Boston Pizza. I just don't know what we would do with the elder people that would walk that far, or somebody who needed assistance having to walk all that way across a drive-through and the proposed development area when it comes to that. And at the end of the day, you're all members of the community, and the good we have done for the community, the long business that has been here and been a part of so many memories, maybe even some of your own. I know that you've helped out through Boston Pizza, through different organizations and stuff like that. It could demise us at the end of the day, and the negative impact that it could have is definitely huge. I think save the parking at the end of the day. Let's figure something out. Again, we have no issue with development going on in that area. We hope for it. It would create more traffic for that area, but if something could be done where we could all win at the end of the day, I think would be the best thing. Maintaining that lot and sharing it moving forward, I think would be great. We're here to help with costs on it and maintenance moving forward in the future. And that's just the biggest part of it all. I hope that you can understand and really think about it. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next delegation, 8.2, Debaji Developments. Morning, welcome.
Morning. Thanks for allowing us to speak this morning. We hope that we can explain ourselves here. We put a great deal of thought into these things before we do these developments. Our main focus is customers. Customers pay all our wages, they pay all our bills. They're the most important aspect of this whole development game, the retail game. I've been in retail business since I've been a young kid, been in this town, part of this town since 1961. Haven't left because, left it, physically as far as, having businesses here. This town was very good to us, and we respect that. And under no circumstances are we here to hurt any business or anything like that. That's not our intent. We had an opportunity, somebody came to us with an opportunity. We weighed it very carefully, and we thought it was good for Wetaskiwin. It's going to bring a lot of jobs, it's going to bring extra tax money, it's going to bring traffic to the area. The more businesses we have in this community, people stay here, they shop in this community. Now, getting back to concerns of Boston Pizza, we're more than willing to work. We're more than willing to work with Boston Pizza, like we always have been. We said right from day one when we bought the properties. We put an extra 10 stalls in front of the Burger King drive-thru, which we weren't required to do, but we did it. We're paving the back part behind Starbucks, which has 25. I think there could be 25 cars there. So we got 35 there. We've got another 25 on the other side, so we've got like probably 55 cars. We've widened the entrances into the 55th Street, the back east entrance on 55th Street. Just past the transformer, we've widened that to increase the traffic flow. We've put a corner going into Starbucks by the light pole, sort of a curb in there to ease the traffic flow going into there. We have not blocked any accesses coming into that property because we realize that Boston Pizza has to do well, and we have to do well as, we feed off each other. So if they're not going to Boston Pizza for a pizza, they're coming for a burger, they're coming to Starbucks, everything feeds off each other. So we want everybody to be successful. Now, Unfortunately, well, not fortunately, unfortunately, we had an accident there, which I'll forget about, but we have the empty lot where the visitor center was. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if it's practical to put a building on there when we got a building on the front, but there's a possibility there, and you know, that we could, and I'm just throwing this out, I'm directed at you guys too, but we could pave that and put some parking in there. That would give us.
Nihad, just make sure you're into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They can hear you.
Okay, okay. Yeah, anyways, yeah, so there's a possibility that we could think about paving that and adding some more parking there. And that's voluntary on our part. You know, so we'd have to take a look at that and see the cost. But that's a possibility, and that would probably give us another, what, 10 to 15 cars.
Plus the 10 on this side. And I think
Yeah.
I counted 25 roughly that are existing there in that lot there. So augmented with that side too, it should equate to the same amount of stalls.
Yeah, yeah, so, I mean, we haven't done this stuff without thought, you know, and consideration, and we've always been considerate. Now, I don't know, like Boston Pizza at the back of their lot, you know, and when we've been there, if that back part of their lot hasn't been utilized for parking, I mean, it's relatively, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been relatively empty, so I mean, that's another, what, 20 cars there that can be used as well. If it's, you know, signed properly and, you know, the direction is, people are directed there.
And with the widening that we're doing on that side of the property too,
Yes.
it could open that up.
It could open that up more.
If you're going to speak, you have to share the mic too. Everybody in here can hear you, but
just
all
on
of our
that-
fans, yeah, all of our fans online.
On that south, it'd be southeast corner of the property there, we're widening that entrance into our lot off 55A Street. So if we're widening that, it could maybe allow for more traffic to come in through the back of the Boston Pizza parking lot for more customers to basically park there instead of where the Burger King is going.
Yeah, and I mean, we have the Burger King parking there, another 10 there. Plus, if we can manage to get that, what do you say, the tourist information center paved, I think, you know, we're you know, solving any issues that Boston Pizza may have, although I don't really see a huge amount of them, but, you know, we don't operate his business, but, so, you know, we're taking all this stuff into consideration. And we've taken the traffic flows, we've got, like, like our entrance off 56th Street is probably now gonna be 40 feet wide. We're gonna cut the curb back a little bit there, so we've done everything that we possibly can to mitigate any problems that we may have in the future, which we don't see any. I mean, we've got engineers working with us and architects, although, you know, sometimes they're not very practical, but, you know, as far as being on the ground and seeing this, that's not a criticism, but we've had a lot of really practical experience in the retail business and, you know, organizing locations and stuff like that, and we did honestly put a lot of thought into this. So we're willing to work with everybody. I mean, no problem. But, you know, we have an obligation too to the people that we signed up for this, you know, the Burger King. So we want to honor our commitments to them as well. Well, by the way, also, we've done a double drive-through there, and we set it back a bit, and that drive-through will more than accommodate any excess traffic coming in there. Like, I don't think it'll even be utilized during the day, the full day. I mean, there's certain times it'll be utilized, but otherwise, I don't see any problem with the traffic flow through there. That's basically, in a nutshell, what I have to say.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, 9 point, nope.
Do you need motions
Through the chair?
to accept?
Oh, I'm sorry, yep, absolutely. You can accept both as information. So first one up for Boston Pizza. Looking for a motion to accept as information. Councillor Nielsen, those in favor? Carried. And for Debaji Developments, Councillor Blatz, those in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, So we remove 9.1, we're moving to 9.2, urban forest sustainability policy.
Good morning, Council. The purpose of the report is to present proposed updates to the urban forest sustainability policy for Council's review. So I'll just go over a summary of the changes and then happy to answer any questions that you may have. So number 1 is just fix grammatical and spelling errors. 2 is to change the annual reporting. Tree care and maintenance activity will be included in an annual Public Works Departmental report rather than the annual tree care report. 3 is wording changes. 4 is additional context. 5 is removal of redundant and unnecessary text. 6 is a bit of a change to our process where we'll be replanting trees at a 1-to-1 ratio instead of 2 for every one that is removed. This is due to the effort that's involved in planting 2 trees for every one that's removed. And typically, we're removing boulevard trees and we'll have to seek out a new location, so it just kind of adds to the complexity of the work. And the last one is just removal of the manager approval for some of the activities in the tree care policy. Felt that a manager approval, taking that away just streamlines the whole process a little more and allows the supervisor and lead hands to use their judgment and expertise to make some of these decisions. With that, I'll take any questions.
Councillor Blatz.
I move that City Council directs administration to bring the Urban Forest Sustainability Policy to the July 22nd, 2024 regular council meeting for approval. And I also have a question, please. Through the chair, when we were going through our updates of different departments and what they'd like to see, there was some concerns brought up that our urban forest sustainability policy was too ambitious. And I was wondering if the changes that were made in this policy kind of address the issues that we were told were issues.
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz, I'm not aware of the issues, so if you could expand on that, I could maybe address those.
So previously we were told that there's too much going into the urban forest sustainability policy and that's too difficult to complete all of the things that are within it, and that we might have to relook at what that looks like. And I was wondering if this helps with capacity with the changes? Or
Yes, this will help with capacity. The target of the 30% tree canopy is a little unattainable, I think. We can strive to meet that goal, but having to stick with that makes it difficult. Further to that, the 2-to-1 replanting ratio is a challenge as well. And I'm on my 3rd summer here, and I haven't seen this practice happen yet, so it makes sense to remove it from the policy or modify it.
Can I ask one more question? Okay, thank you. Within the updates to this, I noticed that the 2-to-1 was changed to 1-to-1, but if you think that the 30% tree canopy is too ambitious, then would we likely see a change to that when it gets brought back next month?
So I did make a change in it for this month. The wording changed to strive to meet that goal. So it doesn't hold us to meeting it. It's our ambition, but we may not get there.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification, Oman, should this be accepted as information and then added to new business if it's going to be directing administration? Okay. So do you want to withdraw your motion and accept as information? Okay. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, Sean. Help me understand 30% tree canopy. What does that actually mean?
So through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, it's 30% of the trees. The city is covered by 30% tree coverage. So, all of the plume of the trees, the leaves, the canopy of the tree, it's 30% of the city is covered.
Okay. And so to me that, I assume then that we have an inventory of all our trees and each tree's contribution to that 30%?
Correct. However, I will say that the inventory has not been kept up to date, so we would need to update that in order to actually have real numbers to report.
Okay, and then in relation to the same question then, where we're talking about pruning every tree within a 10-year cycle, that would necessitate a complete inventory upgrade as well then?
Yes.
And in your opinion, what kind of work needs to go into creating that inventory?
Well, there would need to be GPS collection of all the trees. Public Works doesn't have staff trained and capable of collecting that GPS information, so it would rely on IT services. But it would probably be an every summer thing, reassessing trees, and all of the new plantings would have to be, sent into IT and captured in the GIS system.
So help me understand, if you would please, as we've pruned trees this spring or last fall, what are we doing with that information?
So all the records are kept, but they're not put into the system.
So we've got a paper copy that says we pruned tree on the corner of such and such in 2024.
That's correct, yes.
So A, we need an inventory, then we need a database system to track all that information.
The database system exists, it's just getting the data into it, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Bronco?
When you say city covered at 30%, that is city-owned trees, not public trees. Because when you say city, some guy's got a tree behind the water valve, that's his tree. So are we looking at just the trees that we are gonna maintain, not what's behind public trees? So just on our property, our boulevards, and behind the sidewalk?
Yes.
Private.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, through to Sean. Sean, when we replant trees one for one, is there a timeline on when the tree will be planted?
So depending on when it's removed, it would be either the spring or the fall that we'd replant, that following spring or fall.
So that's just inherent in this.
Yes, yeah. It's
Okay,
just part of our
and-
process.
Okay, and like driving down 50th Street and trees are overhanging, how is that overseen by your staff?
So our crews will assess the growth and determine whether pruning needs to happen and then schedule it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nielsen?
Thank you. Through the chair to Sean. Sean, can you help me understand how you tie the need for a database together with the new urban forest policy? It strikes me that, sounds like an old song, you can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. So how does a new policy impact our processes moving forward when we don't have a comprehensive data package?
That's a good question. It makes it challenging. So we have a process in place to do the pruning, to track our care, but without that database, it's impossible to plan ahead for the future, and it's hard to track the canopy and the growth of trees, and it just becomes an administrative nightmare without the data set.
Then through the chair to Sue then, is this something that would come forward in a business case as we try and put these pieces together?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, it's not a new policy, it's just an update. And so we can still track it manually, it's just a lot more labor. And so what we're trying to do is get everything into systems. Now, the next item for corporate business plan update actually speaks to some of this, where we're trying to get those pieces tied together. So I think until, like, we're on the path to getting this done. I'll leave it at that.
The long and winding road. Okay, that's two songs in one sitting set. Sorry. I stand down, thank you.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to administration, I'm sort of going to tie in the question about the tree canopy being the entire city, and then Councillor Bronco's ask about private trees. So it's not the entire city? Like, just, I need that clarified first.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure, but the only impact we can have is on city-owned property and trees.
So do you have an estimate in your mind if we cannot, if we think that 30% is too ambitious, what is a non-ambitious amount rather than saying strive to? Because what concerns me about that wording is that strive to 30% could mean we cut down all the trees and have no trees, right? And I understand a 1-to-1 ratio is in there, so, but then if we continue to learn, we have so many conifers right now that need to be taken down, and we're going to lose a lot of our tree canopy on private land as well. So that's what's concerning me about the strive to 30%.
To answer your question, I'm not sure what percentage. I mean, with any resources that are available, we can do any percentage that you would like. If you want 40% and the resources are provided, we could make that happen. Without looking further into it, I can't give you an answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, because I'm not sure who can answer this, but back to the database inventory question, because Sue, you said that this isn't a new process, it's just something that needs to kind of come up, and you were talking about how it's in the corporate business plan update as well, but this seems to be something that's relatively important, especially because if we don't have a database, we don't know how many trees of one kind are being planted, and if we can only do 20% of one tree type to prevent disease, then I feel like it's pretty important. Otherwise, we're planting too many of the same tree type, and then we put ourselves at risk of disease and having to take down a whole bunch of trees and replace them with a different type of tree. So I was just wondering how we can prioritize this database actually going forward and becoming a part of the process.
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz, when we first introduced this policy, we knew that it was aspirational. It was taken from another green city in the area, and it was certainly something we knew we weren't going to achieve, but we were going to try to strive for. When we go through the corporate business plan one, I think it'll make a little bit more sense. We know that this is just one area where we need to get our assets into a database, and so we have tried to prioritize that through corporate business plan and operations as much as possible. It also is very closely linked to service levels, so we need all of these pieces to come together for council to have the full picture, to understand what resources are required to be able to set those standards.
Okay, and just to follow up to that, what can we do to make this plan not aspirational? Like, what are the resources that we're lacking that we could add potentially during the budget process to make this an actual achievable plan?
If council approves the service level requests in the corporate business plan, we'll be able to tell you that.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. To Shauna, some alarm bells come off in my mind, especially the planting of trees 2-to-1. Right now, we don't have enough people to maintain the pruning of what we got. So if we're going to plant 2-to-1, how are we going to?
We're not, Councillor Bronco. It's
1-to-1, okay. Right now, we can't keep up with the pruning, correct?
We're having challenges, yes.
It's all about staff and money. And that's what we need, and we don't have it.
Correct.
I don't believe in planting more trees if we can't maintain the ones we got. And my other question, we talk about trees, but if you notice, if you drive in our back alleys, we have a lot of fences, but a lot of shrubs and trees growing on our back alleys, and that becomes also our responsibility. If it's growing on our property, it is. Behind the fence, if you go look, there's a lot of bushes that grow behind the fence and trees on the outside of our property. And we don't maintain those. But that's a different item for table. Thank you.
Sue, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, most, I would say 99% of what happens in the back alley is coming from private property, and we will actually go to the owners and tell them they need to prune it. We go through our bylaw services to get that done.
Anything further?
So what is the motion at this point then?
To accept his information.
Thank you.
Yep. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 9.3, updated corporate business plan 24-25.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So administration attended council's retreat to hear the discussions about the updated goals to see us through to the election. The existing corporate business plan had 14 actions related to council goals and additional 14 items to address corporate culture. We were happy to report that of the 28 actions, 7 had been completed, reported that at the last council meeting. After administration met and went through council's comments, we had discussed 7 projects being moved to operations, and they're all outlined in that table below. And some of these are happening organically already through specific departments, so it wasn't a corporate initiative, and that's why we thought that they should be removed from the corporate business plan. 12 of them we figured we should stop or push until after the election and then reconsider them then. 2 we're requesting should continue, and 1 was a new project that we added in based on the discussion from council's retreat. This brings us down to 3 actual major projects for the corporate business plan, and administration is sure that if we can focus on these 3, that we would be successful in the next 16 to 18 months in getting these completed. The first one, which is the new one, is a communication strategy. We talked about how communication impacts every aspect of our operations, from including public trust, with council, with administration. We do think that it needs to have a link to a public engagement policy, and we think that it needs to be a really holistic strategy for the entire organization, including the public. So we would be suggesting that if council does believe that this is something that needs to be done, it will require funding and the use of a consultant to come in and help us. And we would be bringing forward, we plan to bring this back for final approval on the July 22nd meeting, and so we would have a business case ready to show council what we think that would cost. We have been in consultation with a few different communication companies and have a really good idea on what we think would meet council's objective based on the discussion that we heard. The next 2 are actually items that were in the budget and were not approved. And again, based on the conversation we just had, I think you'll be able to see the link to why we think that these are 2 important ones that need to continue. So establish corporate processes and procedures. We do believe that without key processes that impact the entire organization, there are going to continue to be missed opportunities and deadlines. Some processes are being done ad hoc and create more work and confusion for the public, council, and our staff. It's important that this be a focus of the organization moving forward as it directly relates to the communication strategy that we think is impacting council and the public. We were trying to do this ad hoc after the business case wasn't approved, but when you're doing something off the side of your desk, it never really does get the attention that it needs. The second one that we think we should continue doing is to develop and formalize our service levels. So this was another business case that was not approved. However, we're asking council to approve this to stay in part of the corporate business plan. We do have money in our strategic services that we contract out help, and so we're not going to be asking for new money on this. We would just be redirecting that money. So we would take a little bit of a pause, although this could be considered strategic services, in that contract that we have, and flip this over into a service level discussion so that we can get everything in front of council. We do believe that once we have all of our service levels approved by council, that we're going to be able to have those discussions, just like the questions you were having about the urban forest policy. Once we know exactly what council wants us to be doing, where we can appropriately staff and resource each one of them, or you set a standard that meets the existing staff that we have. I recently was in a session at CAMA as well, and one of the lawyers had suggested that if we do have a service level that hasn't been set by council, that we are at risk. So lawsuits happen all the time within municipalities, but they are completely defendable so long as the governing board has set the levels of service and expectations. And so knowing that we still have a few levels of service that haven't been approved by council, this becomes even more important for us to get in front of council and get approved. So that wouldn't require extra money, but I did want to highlight it because it was something that was not approved during budget. So these three projects are the recommendations of administration moving forward with the corporate business plan, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Nielsen.
I move the City Council accepts this report as information. I do have some questions.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Sue. On the communication strategy, I certainly don't deny the fact that we need to do some work there that will benefit the organization and our community. I guess the thing that I wonder about is, do we, meaning this group, have a complete understanding of what the current strategy is in terms of what are we accomplishing? It's been identified there's been some shortcomings in whatever we're doing and that we can improve the system. So I guess the question before we go racing off to improve the system, I would like to understand what the system is currently doing and then what any recommendations would mean in terms of moving the organization from A to B. Because for me, if I don't know what A is, when I'm given a bunch of recommendations, it's just a bunch of recommendations. It doesn't show me where the growth is going to be in the organization. And I know we talked about service levels and sitting tight on that a little bit, but I really wonder if we don't need to do a service level on communication before we bring a bunch of consultants in to help us move from A to B. A thought.
Mm-hmm. Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I have been speaking with the GM about getting the external communications in front of council as part of your level of service approval, and then of course the internal, you can have a look at it, but that would be something that I would approve. We do know what they're doing right now and what the structure is, so we could bring that back as part of the service level agreement. The only concern that I have is that the other two, the service level and establish the processes, we know we can get those done before, like in the next 16 months. But if we don't start something on a communication strategy right now, it will not help council at all. We won't, in 16 months, we won't be able to get something finished if we don't start on it sooner than later. And I think maybe scoping, if you see the business case that we bring forward, you'll understand what the scope of the services are. We plan to bring that with the next one. I probably could have included more information on that here.
But if, sure, but if you know what's currently being done through communications, can you share with us what's being done with communications? And that becomes my starting point in this journey of bringing a consultant in to get us from where we are now to where we hope to be somewhere down the road in 16 months.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we could bring that forward. The problem is that right now we're not doing a lot of what we should be doing because we're putting out fires, we're chasing misinformation, we're dealing with things that if we actually had a strategy, we probably wouldn't be chasing as many fires as we are. So they're kind of interrelated.
And I hear that, but
We will bring it forward though, for sure.
for me, if I know what they've got planned, that they're not accomplishing because of
Right.
these constraints, that helps guide my discussions in terms of where I see a consultant coming in to move us away from the diversions back to the specific tasks. But I don't know right now, other than sort of what you're sharing with me now, that we're not doing what we're doing because we've got all these other issues going on. I would just like to become apprised of that information as we move forward with this. So
Yeah,
thank
we'll
you.
bring that forward with
Thank
the
you.
business case.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Sue, is part of the consideration of bringing the consultants in also to look at that communication strategy and strengths and weaknesses within that as well? And that, because that, when I looked at it and I thought of having the having a consultant come in, is that they're also working with the staff as to how things could be more efficient in that way. So is that included in the thought press for that consulting people?
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, it is. So they would look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, what are the trends out there, what are some of the better things that we should be doing. We would have set processes for when we turn comments off or when we keep them on, and you know, all sorts of things that would affect their levels of service. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Sue. I want to talk to Sue and I can't do that. Sue, the stop the develop a land strategy, how does that tie in with the work we've done on the MDP?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, it doesn't. The MDP is the high-level aspirational, what we're going to do within the community. The land strategy is we have a bunch of city-owned lots,
Okay.
and what are we going to do with them in the future? Do we need them? Should we sell them? Should we develop them for other purposes?
Thank you.
Anything further? Motion is to accept as information. Those in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 10.1, Direct Control Development Permit Application for Plan 7920904 OT. Good morning, welcome Emily.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Today's presentation is to provide for council's decision an application for a development permit for Plan 7920904 OT, as shown in Attachment 1. This was previously presented for information at Committee of the Whole on June 10th and was the subject of delegations earlier in this meeting. The subject parcel is located on 56th Street, immediately south of the Starbucks development and immediately north of Boston Pizza. It is zoned DC direct control, which means that council and not administration is the approval authority for development. The proposal is for a fast food drive-through restaurant and associated parking, as shown on the site plan in Attachment 2. Administration has reviewed the proposal against the usual provisions for this type of use in the land use bylaw and against the city's servicing and design standards. As noted at Committee of the Whole, the city is aware that parking and vehicle access is a consideration for this parcel. The city only has the authority to impose conditions regarding access. It does not have the authority to require adjacent landowners to develop shared parking agreements. However, a shared access and parking agreement could be used in part to demonstrate compliance with a condition requiring access across lots. Administration is proposing the development permit conditions listed in Attachment 3, along with their rationale, and these are largely as presented on June 10th. As noted at that time, these are generally standard, but require vehicle access across the subject parcel and the Starbucks and Boston Pizza parcels, and they require the parking for the fast food development to be clearly marked, as some of it lies on the adjacent parcel. One minor change since Committee of the Whole is an amendment to the utility plan condition to note that the city may require utility easements to be surveyed and registered on title as part of the approval. This is to accommodate some anticipated cross-lot drainage that would need to be clearly documented and maintained if either parcel was ever sold. And so those are the key points that I wanted to bring to your attention today. With that, I'd welcome any questions that you might have.
Councillor Blatz.
I move that council approve the development permit for Plan 79200904 OT as presented.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any questions? Councillor Bronco.
Thank you. So we have no jurisdiction over the parkings between Mr. Debaji and Boston Pizza, is that correct? If they wanted to build that building to the application, we just have certain, like utilities crossing, and so it's up to them, two developers, to fight over the parking stall, not us.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, we've reviewed parking requirements against what we normally require in the land use bylaw. We do have requirements for particular uses that we've considered in making our recommendations, and we are able to, as per our land use bylaw, we can impose conditions that require access across lots, but we've sort of confirmed with legal advice as well that we don't actually have the authority to require shared access to parking that's set aside for each development. We can certainly recommend it and encourage it, but we don't have the authority to require a signed agreement between owners as a condition of development.
So, okay, I understand that, I agreed. If one developer decided he's going to use that, would that make Boston Pizza a shortage of parking stalls for their operation? Because they need so many parking stalls. So that'd be, it's just like the city has a policy, if you build something downtown, we charge so much for a parking stall. I think it's $1,500. I remember, I don't know if it's gone up or down. If you want a parking stall, it's $1,500. You pay, in this case would be to the developer who's building the building.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, the policy that applies downtown is our cash in lieu of parking policy that applies in a very specific area. Doesn't apply in this case.
Okay, thank you.
So we wouldn't necessarily have two property owners fighting over parking spots. And you said that we can't require the parking or the use of parking, but can we ask for it?
Through the chair to Mayor Gandam, we can ask for it. I'm not sure how much legal weight that requirement would have.
So what I heard earlier from Mr. Debaji is that there's the willingness to work with the adjacent property owner. I'm just wondering then if, as we're working through this development permit, if the city can facilitate that conversation between the two property owners and make sure that everybody's needs are being looked after while still maintaining that ability for development and that growth that we're having in the area.
As far as I know, council could make that direction to administration.
Okay. Councilor Nielsen?
Thank you. When we talk about parking, and we've indicated it's been indicated there's an extra 10 stalls plus 25 stalls. But in looking at the site plan, there is a reduction of parking along the southeast corner where people pull in to go into Starbucks. Those were once 5 parking stalls along that side, which are now being taken away to allow for a drive-through from 56th Street into Starbucks. See where I'm speaking of, Emily?
In the
south side of
southeast.
First development, yeah.
Of the first development, yeah. There was 5 or 6 parking stalls on the south side of.
I do see them now, yes. Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, that was conceptual at the time, and my understanding is that those are not necessarily being taken out at this time. Some of the discussion that was had between the applicant and the city was, is that extra space required for vehicle access and to ensure free flow of circulation? And in the end, it was noted that it wasn't necessarily required.
Okay, so that conceptual drawing that shows where the vehicles will pull in on the south side of that first development is not accurate.
Not this one, this is conceptual.
And
So
so
we can-
where do the vehicles that show here in this conceptual drawing actually gain access to Starbucks, for example?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, there is room for two-way circulation south of those existing parking stalls.
The same way that it is right now.
So two-way, same as it is now. So with vehicles coming in and lining up to go into potentially the drive-through at Boston Pizza, drive-through at Burger King, and traffic flowing west to make access to 56th Street, and vehicles coming in and lining up to go into Starbucks going east, you're saying there's enough space there for basically 3 lines of traffic?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, in our discussions with the applicant looking at the site plan, you'll notice that going into the Starbucks drive-through at the moment, there's room for approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 10 cars in that queue, and the applicant has noted that the max queue for Starbucks really at any time of day has been up to about a dozen cars. So we don't expect that with that capacity that's already there in the Starbucks drive-through that there would be much impact in the main east-west traffic flow. Not necessarily requiring 3 lanes of traffic going through.
And then what would be the assumptions then of people coming out of Burger King, trying to enter into potentially 2/3 lines of traffic? One coming in, one trying to get into Starbucks, and traffic going west.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we didn't anticipate that being a problem most of the time. There is room to direct the applicant to increase traffic markings. We've discussed having some arrows painted to sort of facilitate the traffic flow. There's also the possibility of providing direction regarding sort of no stopping areas or things like that, if that's a concern, but we didn't foresee that being a capacity issue.
Okay. And was there a consideration given to potential traffic flow stoppage on 56th Street trying to pull in?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, that's certainly something we'd like to avoid. Again, with the queuing space that's currently available for the Burger King drive-through, there's 8 to 10 queuing spaces. We did not foresee that there would be more cars than that backed up onto 56th Street. The applicant has also indicated that for the existing Starbucks drive-through, the bulk of the access actually is from 55A Street. So that gives a little bit of extra space as well.
Could you repeat that one for me, Emily?
So the existing access from 56th Street,
Is not primary?
pardon?
It would not be primary?
The applicant indicates that the existing site development for the Starbucks building actually receives most of its access from 55A Street. We haven't been able to independently verify it. We don't have the mechanisms to do it, but that was their observation.
And when we as the city work through the development permits, how are we bound, how are we governed with regard to traffic flow? Like, do we make those calculations internally in our organization, or is that recommendations regarding traffic flow come from somewhere else?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, for traffic flow, we don't have a lot to go on. For parking, we have our land use bylaw to go on. Those calculations, my understanding is they come from the International Transportation Engineering Association that looks at parking demand across the continent for various uses. We don't have it for drive-through to go on.
Yeah, my concern is traffic flow, and especially coming off of 56th Street, I have some concerns, but it's obviously been looked at. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Emily. Potentially, Emily, how many parking spots would Boston Pizza be losing?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I have that in my notes here. Or I had in my old notes, I apologize, from last session.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a very fair question. My understanding is there was approximately 27 parking stalls in the existing lot, and so those would be proposed for the site of the Burger King. The Burger King development itself would require 10 stalls that would be provided in that area, and as the applicant noted, they are proposing approximately 25 stalls in the northeast corner of the Starbucks site that could be the subject of a shared parking agreement. So there may be a net loss of a couple of stalls there, and then the movement of that parking to a different location on the site.
And the suggestion was made that maybe Boston Pizza could develop parking behind their restaurant, but that would be at Boston Pizza's cost, probably, unless there was a cost-sharing agreement as well.
That's correct. And it would also, there would be a question of where that parking would go. Currently to the east of the Boston Pizza building, there are approximately 20 stalls. Those have always been there, to my knowledge, and those would continue to be there. I'm not sure how much additional room there is on the Boston Pizza site to develop additional parking. Although the intention of a condition that administration is recommending is that access across the various lots to the parking that is on Boston Pizza site be maintained, and we can require that.
And the land that is west of Madison Manor, that whole big parking lot there, east of the proposed, who owns that?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, but that's a potential too, that somebody could purchase part of that to use for parking?
That's something that the landowners involved would have to work out,
Yes.
but that's certainly something they could explore.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I will propose an amendment that we direct administration to work with the two parties on facilitating that parking east of the proposed Burger King and 10 parking stalls. Nope. I was just waiting for Emily to be done writing the notes down. No, that's okay. To the amendment? Those in favor? Carried. Councillor Aberley?
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Emily, and you may not be able to answer it, and I probably should have asked this the the last time we were here. It just came into my head. Do you know, is the reason to have it where it currently is and maybe not push it back, is that due to access from 56th Street? And I am thinking about congestion as well as that parking.
Through the chair to Councillor Aberle, do you mean of the building, the Burger King
Yeah,
building
if
itself?
I'm
or
looking at it, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at it right, so the reason for it not being more onto 55A Street versus 56th Street, like shifting it east, was that because of a desire to have street access from what we call the Autumn Mile?
Through the chair to Councillor Aberle, in our discussions with the applicant indicated that that was part of the sort of agreement with the franchise.
Okay.
That building placement was what they were looking for.
Thank you.
Anything further? Go ahead.
I guess I'm looking for some clarification because with the amendment, which I agree to, but the end result is a mutually agreed upon parking arrangement between the two parties. We can't dictate that.
Correct.
Right. So then, if we pass the motion with the amendment and they can't reach an agreement on parking, the development still goes ahead.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.2, request for funding for the Canadian Pacific Railway pedestrian crossing, known as a CPKC. They acquired the KC line, so you have to include that in their name.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to request the funding for CPR works. That's the pedestrians on 47 Avenue and 50 Avenue railway crossing intersections. This project is supposed to be part of our sidewalk project. Initially, that was how it was planned for. And now we have some unallocated LGFF grant. That's $230,709, which we can use towards this project. The reason for asking for this LGFF grant is that if we do it from the sidewalk budget, then that will reduce our scope of the sidewalk renewals and rehab this year. So we just want to use that $600,000, which was allocated to the sidewalk project from CCBF funding. We'll use that toward the sidewalk, and all this LGFF grant, which is unspent from the past years, we will use this for this CPR pedestrian crossing works.
Councillor Aberle.
Thank you. I move that City Council direct administration to apply for the local government fiscal framework grant in the amount of $237,009 for the Canadian Pacific Railway pedestrian crossings. And just a quick comment to it, I do believe that this is an important and oh my gosh, I'm sorry. When we talk about safety and we talk about these crossings, I do think that this is an important project and that I'd be very happy to see done.
Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to administration, I'm trying to understand how using the LGFF grant will allow us to spend more money on sidewalk. Were we planning on taking this amount of money out of the sidewalk allocation?
Through the chair to Council Nielsen, yes, at this point this was planned to do that way, but we found some unspent funding in LGFF, and then now we're planning to use that LGFF funding towards this CPR works and use the $600,000 which we have initially approved towards all the sidewalk projects.
Great, thank you. Now, when we talk about pedestrian crossing at 47 and 50th, What does that look like for $300,000
So basically, the
or
scope,
$230,000?
the scope of work is it'll be in the CPR jurisdiction. So CPR will be carrying out that work. So basically, the scope of work is to putting the concrete tires in both the northbound and southbound tracks, and then do the asphalt works in between the tracks, and then putting the sidewalk in the CPR jurisdiction, and that will be on city's cost.
So where the cross arms come down, the pedestrian actually would walk behind that
Yes. Yes.
rather than stepping off onto the roadway.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. So, I think what my colleagues are trying to say is $230,000, that does include the CP.
That's
What is the city of Wetaskiwin's portion?
the arms are already moved. They are already in the place. So this 230K amount will be spent on the sidewalk, which we'll be putting in the CPR jurisdiction, plus the concrete piers that will go in the tracks. That will be done by the CPR, and then there is some asphalt work, or I would say the hard surfacing work that need to be done in between both the tracks in order to get that continuity for the sidewalk. No, everything will be on city's cost. There is nothing going back to CP. They will be doing the work, but at the city's cost. Yeah, we have to pay CPR.
Your mic's not on, Councilor Bronco. Mike.
So that's what I'm trying to say is, we from what I get, somebody was to look at, it's $230,000 for a sidewalk, but that actually includes the CP crossing section.
Yes, and also includes the removal of the tracks too. So there, if you currently see, there are two tracks, just I would say east of both the tracks, and then
Yes.
Those will be removed too.
Across the whole road?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the
Yeah.
clarification I wanted to know.
Why is the city required to pay for improvements to CP property?
Gil, I've got this one. Through the chair to all of council, we had had this discussion probably 5 or 6 years ago. We have, I think it's over 110-year-old agreement with CP that we're trying to get updated. In that agreement, it says the city is 100% responsible for all work with anything to do with CP at any of our road crossings. That's a very old agreement. All the new updated agreements across the country show a 50-50 share, and we've been trying to work with CP to get this updated. Of course, it's in their best interest to not update this agreement, so it's been very slow, but we're still working on it.
I'd like to move to table this. Those in favor? Opposed? Defeated? Okay, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Bears. Sue answered my question about the cost to CP. I just wonder why they're not cost sharing with us.
Councilor Bronco?
Just a question to the engineering department. That is a very used piece of pathway. I call it a goat path because you could see the grass. Are we preparing for the future to do a 2-meter or 6-meter sidewalk so we can have that? Or just a little 5-foot sidewalk?
So how this will be going out, CPR will be putting a 9 feet wide concrete blocks, so that will give an opportunity in the future if we have to do that. So, and then because there is a certain requirement, if you have to go beyond 9 feet, then you must have that signal crossing on the sidewalks, just like a cantilever masts. We need to have that on the sidewalks if we go beyond that. So that will have to, and then that requires extra transformer and all that expenses. Certainly we will, but that's a cost to city in future if we have to do that.
Thank you.
So I'll be voting against this motion. I would like to see, I will be working at further advocacy with CPKC in terms of that new agreement. I think the precedent's been set with other municipalities. If they were able to negotiate a 50-50 deal with a railroad company, that we should be in the same boat. So I don't feel like $230,709 coming from the city is appropriate when other jurisdictions are paying 50%. Anything further? Councillor Blatz.
Just really quick, through the chair to Sue, for LGFF funding, is it like rolling funding? Like if we don't use a certain amount, then we still have it next year? Or do we lose it if we don't use it every year?
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz, it rolls over.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just for clarification in the motion, why do we have to apply for the LGFF?
Through the chair to council, we have to put in an application, what our intention is each year to spend the money, and then it either gets approved based on there are still specific requirements within that we have to meet.
Yeah. Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to administration. If this motion fails, then is it the intention of administration to take the $230,000 or a portion thereof out of the LGFF grant and apply it to sidewalks?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, no, because if this is voted down, we have clear direction not to do it. The problem is that CP is really hard to work with, and it may be another couple of years before we get this opportunity again. Their scheduling is, we're at the whim of their scheduling, and we do get a lot of complaints about all of our crossings, but we can deal with that.
But there was a portion of this money that I thought was going to sidewalk work aside from the crosswalks.
We have a separate budget that was approved through the budget process for sidewalk replacement and new sidewalks. That budget stays intact. We just didn't want to spend this crossing money through that budget because it would reduce it.
I gotcha. Okay. Thank you, I think.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Sue. So Sue, CP Rail can just tell us, okay, we want you to fix the sidewalks, we want you to do it this year, and we want you to pay for it.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, no, they're not that proactive. Usually we get notice from Transport Canada that there's a violation, or the engineering team identifies the areas that need to be repaired. This is obviously an area that strollers, wheelchairs, bikes have issues, pedestrians have issues getting through, so it has been identified for a long time. Typically, the only time CP will act is if Transport Canada forces it, and even then, sometimes it takes a few years. Yeah, Transport Canada has identified this as an issue back from when I first started here.
And when we get LGFF funding, don't we just get a block of funding and we determine how it's spent?
That's correct.
So why can't this money be spent somewhere else if this motion was defeated?
It can. All of the projects that were put forward and approved are funded, and we didn't put forward more projects than we could do this year, so there was some money that was carried over.
But this was not on the project for the LGFF when we approved the budget?
It was not.
So just one more time, if this is voted down, we still will have that $230,000 in our budget to use as we see fit?
No, it's available from the government, and we would come back to council and ask for it to be spent. We have not asked for that money to be spent yet.
But we get a lump from the government. Do we have to justify everything that we spend?
Yeah, we get an allocation each year.
Yes.
Based on our population. Well, based on a number of factors, apparently, with the new formula. And based on what we put forward for approval from council, we then apply for those.
Right.
We've put forward less requests for projects than we have available money. So this money will carry forward to next year.
Okay. And it could be a different request next year.
It could.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler, and to my colleagues. Sooner or later, it has to be done. We have to rip up those old railway ties or crossings. You know, it's like you do now, you do later. Later is more expensive. But it's an eyesore to watch those two pieces of steel hanging out the side of the road. Sooner or later, I would agree with Tyler if we can get 50%, let CP pay, but that goat trail's been there for as long as I've been in Wetaskiwin. I think I'd like to see it myself, put a little sidewalk so people can walk there. You got, you know, children, bikes and everything. It cleans up our community. I'm in favor of this. So.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Sue. Sue, in the event that we don't do anything and pedestrians choose to step onto the road to go around the obstacle, can't think of the word, sorry, the railway arms, and there's an accident, what kind of liability is on us in that regard, because we haven't created an alternate pathway?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the city always gets sued in every case. I would have to get a legal opinion on what that, if there is an increased liability because of this. There's certain factors that come into play when it comes to the level of service that the municipality provides. And right now there is a level of service that's being provided. People are choosing to go around it. So I would need to get a legal opinion before I could advise you on that.
Thank you. And do we have any indication from CP that if we free up this money, when they would be in our community?
It'll be in August or September, that's what they were indicating.
So point of clarification or point of order, you put a motion forward to table it, it was defeated. I helped defeat it. Can I put a motion forward to table?
Noman, can a motion be tabled twice in the same?
So the first motion was defeated, right?
Correct. Can somebody bring tabling motion back?
We need a vote on that.
Yeah, if somebody made a
can,
motion to table it, can they still do that if it's the second time in that motion?
We can do that.
Okay.
Through the chair to the chair. I happen to agree that we shouldn't be spending, we shouldn't have to pay the full amount when other communities across Canada are paying partial amounts. But I also concur that moving forward on this is important. From your perspective and advocacy with CP, what would be your time frame?
As soon as they get back to me. I've already got an email drafted.
August, you said, August, September?
Yeah, that's what the tentative timeline is.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to table until sometime in the future.
July 22nd? July 22nd?
That would mean we're still on the docket for action.
So just to be cognizant of the thing, because once we say, okay, we are going ahead with this work, the material, the precast blocks, they are on a pre-order, so they need some lead time. So if we say we are stopping this work at this point and come back in July and say, okay, then we might get delayed from September, possibly maybe to the next year, depending on their work schedule. That's how the CPR planned the things.
Till July, whatever.
22nd?
22nd.
Okay. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed?
Is that the
Tabling.
to table both?
Thank you. It's tabled to July 22nd. 10.3, liquor store investigation extension request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In speaking with Councillor Billingsley, this was a request that he had put forward, and as he is not available today, he has requested that we move this to the July 22nd meeting.
Any discussion? Looking for a motion. Councillor Elliott.
I move that City Council directs administration to bring this item to the July 22nd, 24 regular council meeting.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 10.4, playground equipment replacement plan.
Good morning. Nope, it's not on. Good morning, Mayor Gandam and City Council. I am back again to present a follow-up report to the inspection report that I presented on June 8th. Administration has reviewed and evaluated the conditions of the playgrounds here in the city. And playgrounds are one of those city assets that can be also an extreme liability. And all 16 of our playgrounds require attention. In summary of the report, administration is recommending the closure of 2 playgrounds due to safety concerns: Peace Hills Park and a small pocket park in a green space behind Maple and Elm Crescents. And this park is located in the middle of 2 other parks that are within 750 meters to a kilometer. Also recommending that there is the removal of old metal climbing apparatus that present a high risk of injury. As well, a multi-year capital charter can be created to phase in the repair, retrofitting, and replacement of the city's 16 playgrounds. And that was explained in the report as well. Also, the last recommendation is that a playground reserve is created to support the city's contribution to the maintenance, redevelopment of existing playgrounds and development of new playground spaces. The protective surfacing in all the parks needs to be topped up or replaced and worked up on a regular basis to mitigate weeds and compaction. Within the content of the report, administration has provided a brief summary of the community engagement plan and an aligned playground enhancement program with some timelines. Currently, administration is working with the Lions on replacing features at the Ben George Park, as this will be a pilot to the process outlined in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Aberley.
I move that City Council accepts the plan as outlined in the request for decision.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Councillor Aberley.
Through the chair to Zanette, it's so funny because the 2 parks, it's funny in my head because the 2 parks that you mentioned are actually parks that I see used regularly, because one is by my house and the other one is at Peace Hills, because I go there more than I go to by the lake parks. So what was, I can kind of understand the Maple and Elm one. The Peace Hills one, I'm just having the rationale behind that one. Is it age of it? Is it, does it make sense?
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, a lot of the equipment there is an extreme hazard due to strangulation and length of falling, and just the spaces that are located between the top of the rails, at the top of the slide, for example, and at the bottom of the slide, there's significant damage to that bottom slide. So that is one of those reasons, in addition to the compactness of the protective surfacing.
When we, just really quickly, because when we're looking at, and I understand that we're looking at all 16 of these parks and we're having to do things with them. So this is the inability to just take bits out and leave it. We have to get rid of all the structures that are there, because and the cost to replace is over and above what we have in budget.
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, absolutely. One of the challenges with that particular park is that it is it's not a modular unit, it is one big piece. And so you can't take one piece away without impacting the safety of the entire playground.
And just, if I may, one more, because I know I'm going to hear about this. One, removal of these parks does not mean that in the future a group could come together and rebuild one, because the one between Maple and Elm was put there by a service group. Correct.
So through the chair to Councillor Elliott, absolutely. We can definitely look at recruiting sponsorship for parks to redevelop them. And
Thank
that
you.
is part of the plan.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you. Tyler? Thank you. Question. Alarms go off when you say, sometimes just a little word you say. We having problems with weeds? So Parks and Recs Department, we're obviously not keeping up with the weeds. Again, due to short staff and funding.
Through the chair to Councillor Bracco, absolutely, that is part of the challenge, is that we do not have enough of the human resources to go in and float, rototill, whatever method can be used to pull the weeds. Because part of the problem, weeds typically grow when surfaces, or the surface is compacted.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get out. So yes, we need to have another resource or two to get to that.
So Parks and Recs are short-staffed, basically. And to administration, do we have a business case come for budget to, because it seems like we got a beautiful town, but we can't maintain it.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, the parks level of service was set and we are staffed appropriately for it. If council wants to reconsider the level of service approved, we would definitely bring forward what those requirements would look like. We are bringing forward staffing business cases as part of budget, but I don't believe there are any in parks.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Zanette, the one park at Elm and Maple, that would just be kept as a green space then, that would not be sold off or anything?
Through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, absolutely, that is the plan. We would keep it as a green space. And with parks, you can have passive parks, passive play spaces as well. So that would remain green space until we can either find a partner to go in with us on redeveloping that playground.
And the service group that, I don't even know which service group funded that, but they will be made aware of this if they're still in existence?
Through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I have a concern about Peace Hills Park not having playground equipment, in the fact that there are a lot of people that still go out there to picnic. They go out there with their pets. We have cross-country running that goes on. We have disc golf. We have a number of people that appreciate that park. A few years ago, we had a Filipino Independence Day celebration over the weekend, and people camped out there. And so I would, in my mind, I would like to see what we could do to maintain or upgrade that park, even if you have to take out all of the pieces that are there, because it's a one piece of equipment. But I think we should look into something, this is my thought anyway, that we look into something that would allow people to go out there and have one more aspect of recreation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Zanette. My first question is just a note of clarification under community engagement, bullet number 3. I'll let you get there. Signage at the park giving a minimum, at minimum, a 2 notice, week, month, year.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I noticed that yesterday when I was reading the report that it should be week.
It's weeks. Okay, thank you. My concern is in relation to all the other concerns my colleague shared, but is in relation to removing old metal climbing apparatus. And I guess as we start talking about moving pieces of equipment out of an existing park, hypothetically, you've got 3 or 4 pieces of equipment. You're pulling 2 out because of risk. We have 2 standing there. Do we constitute that as a park and a playground now? I mean, if we pull out and leave 1 piece of equipment there, is that a playground then? Or is it just a lonely piece of equipment sitting in a green space? And I guess my concern would be understanding that if you're going to park A and it's got 6 pieces of equipment and we're pulling 2 out, there's still 4 pieces of equipment. I understand that, but if hardly anything remains, what is the message to the community that we're decimating, probably in their words, access for their children? And also in light, it would appear that parks are put together in relation to age groups, and you clump 2 age groups here. And by pulling out certain pieces of equipment that are more dangerous, they would certainly have been likely for an older age group to begin with. So what's left for that age group? So when does a park or a playground cease to exist as we remove equipment? And is 1 piece of equipment still a playground for that neighborhood?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I am not familiar if we have a designated playground definition or a playground, what constitutes a playground. I think that is something that we would definitely need to look at. And the intention behind this is not to remove all the pieces and not go back. It's just acknowledging that standards have changed significantly since pieces were put in 1970, 1969. And so one of the apparatus of concern is that if it's a metal apparatus that is over 80 inches high is a severe fall risk. And depending on how a child falls, they could break something or they could have a life-threatening injury, a life-altering injury. So those are the priorities that I've identified that need to be removed, as well as anything that has a strangulation or a fall-through rate, depending on what is on the bottom of it. So there's 2 pieces at Elm and Maple, for example, that are the metal structures that are over 80 inches high, and if someone were to fall on that, they're falling on grass, as opposed to protective surfacing like sand or tire crumb or engineered wood fiber.
We all hung upside down on the monkey bars. Anyway, that dates me, I guess. Is there any plans to relocate equipment from one park to another? So for example, you pull 2 pieces of equipment out of Park A, Park B, you've removed all but 1 piece, we'll take that 1 piece out and put it back into Park A. Or are we just going to leave independent pieces of equipment all over our community?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, at this time, I would say we were going to leave that 1 piece of playground equipment at that park so that there is some indication that that is a playground, as well as it would mean that there'd be a lot, again, resourcing would also need to be involved in that, because there would need to be a contractor contracted to move that piece of equipment, establish the footings, and try to squeeze it into an existing footprint.
And when would you foresee this equipment starting to come out?
Hopefully by the end of the summer.
Early November.
That's wishful thinking.
Is it reasonable to request being kept up to date as each park is dealt with, so we know what's been removed and what's remaining, just as information?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, that is the plan. Nothing would be moved or removed or done without council's awareness.
Thank you.
Sue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Nielsen, just to answer some of the bigger planning topics that you touched on. We are still in the process of updating our JUPA, our Joint Use Planning Agreement with the school boards. And part of that includes utilization of sports fields and which ones we're going to keep and not keep. And the playgrounds was a part of that whole thing too. So which, where are the demographics? Where do we need playgrounds? We have ones in the middle of 3 alleys that meet that aren't necessary. And so we would be bringing some of those back to council for consideration prior to finalizing any of our agreements.
May I follow up on that? So then, Sue, currently, school playground equipment is maintained by the city?
No, we do have agreements with them for maintenance of some of the fields, especially the ones that we use. So if we don't need them, we would be updating that agreement then to say this is back on the school board. The playground is just it's not necessarily a function of the JUPA, but because it's the same department that's dealing with all of it, we're looking at all of it at the same time. And then when we come back and identify, we'll be working with our planning department because they do parks planning as well, and our engineering department to look at this holistically and say, where are the trends? Where do we need parks? Where do we not? If a school has a park, why would we have a community park within 100 meters of it or 200 meters, right? So.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make an amendment. The amendment would be that we don't close but upgrade Peace Hills Park Playground. I just don't think, I think we need to have some other form of activity out there when families go out there to enjoy a sunny afternoon or something, so.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, could you identify the LGFF funding as a source?
Pardon me?
Could
you
you?
like to just identify where the funding is going to come from?
Well, where's the rest of it coming from?
Rest of what?
Removals are
Where's
being
the
done
rest of the
in-house, I think.
upgrades and everything else coming from?
We're just doing removals this year, and we would do that in-house. LGFF has money available.
Yeah, $230,000. Okay. Okay, to come from LGFF funding.
Thank you. To the amendment, Councilor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I'm in full support of the idea of the amendment. And I hate this, but I can't support it in action that it is right now because I would rather see something like this come forward as a business case at our budget cycle in this fall.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. I'm confused. You said close Peace Hill Park or remove the playground equipment?
Through the chair to Councillor Branco, it would be closed in the sense that the playground equipment would no longer be there.
The park isn't actually closed. There's no playground equipment.
There's just no play, yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Closing the playground.
Okay, thank you.
So what I was, before Councillor Elliott's amendment, one of the things that, because I brought all of this forward in creating a more family-friendly community, and I think that's a great attraction that we could have. I've seen some pretty impressive playgrounds across the province, and I think that I feel like it's important that we invest in playgrounds like that. And so I wanted to see if we were going to be removing a playground, that it was going to be replaced. And I think that it is something that should come forward as a business case at budget time. If we're looking at removing playgrounds towards the end of this year, I feel that that gives us the opportunity through our budgeting process to use funds outside of, and it might still come from LGFF, but I think that we can create an ongoing investment and plan on how these playgrounds are going to be replaced, repaired, along with the removal. So I think we need a more comprehensive plan moving forward as opposed to just one-off playground replacements. So I would not vote in favor of this amendment, just based on the fact that I would like to see a more comprehensive plan moving forward. And then I would have to find out what we had in LGFF reserves and the carryovers from the previous years so that we can have a more comprehensive plan. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through to the administration, did we not put money away this year for playgrounds?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I do not believe the only plan that we had was to remove the unsafe pieces throughout the city. There was no new installation besides, well, by the Lake Park, but that was a previous year project that was approved.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, did you not move to put a playground in somewhere?
No, I wanted to see what $65,000 would do
Oh, okay, that's
in
right.
terms of a playground upgrade
Okay.
or replacement based on that lot sale
Okay.
and Garden Meadows.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further to the amendment? Those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Back to the original motion. So again, I will support this motion with the understanding that come budget time, I will be wanting to see what a plan is on playground replacement and having a plan for ongoing maintenance and replacement of city-owned assets, which would also include provincial and federal grant opportunities as well as a partnership with the school board. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senate. Item 10.5, Manluk Center, Variable Frequency Drive Replacement, or the VFD, as per Councillor Elliott. Funding approval.
Hey, good morning, Mayor Gandam and members of council. In May of this year, the Supreme Water Slide at Manluk Center was closed due to a failed variable frequency drive. A variable frequency drive, commonly referred to as a VFD, is a motor controller that drives an electric motor by varying the frequency and voltage of its power supply. There are approximately 40 VFDs that control various equipment at the Manluk Center, and 7 of the 40 VFDs control the pumps of the pools and pool-related features. The Supreme Water Slide has remained closed until the VFD can be replaced to avoid unnecessary wear and tear on the pump. Typical life expectancy for a VFD is 7 to 12 years, depending on the application of the VFD. The majority of the VFDs are original and were installed when the Manluk Center was constructed in 2013-2014. With the exception of the hot tub, that VFD was replaced in 2022. Furthermore, on June 13th, the Manluk Center experienced an unscheduled shutdown due to a failed VFD that controls the co-op competition pool. To avoid further disruption to patrons and user groups, a replacement VFD was purchased and installed. The competition pool reopened to the public on June 14th at 8 a.m. Had the repair not been made, the competition pool would have had to remain closed, resulting in further user group disruption, including needing to cancel the swim meet that was scheduled on June 15th. Administration is seeking funding approval of up to $30,000 from the Facility Lifecycle Asset Management Reserve to cover the cost of replacement and installation of the 2 failed VFDs, the comp pool and the Supreme Water Slide. Administration would also like to replace the VFD for the leisure pool to avoid an unexpected closure during the busy summer season. It is likely that the leisure pool VFD is in a critical state based on the competition pool VFD failing and the age of the VFD. Please note that if the funding is not approved today for the 3 VFDs, the VFD that has already been purchased for the comp pool would just be funded from the Manluk building operating budget. Administration will be putting forward a plan to address all the VFDs, and you would likely see that during the 2025 budget cycle, which would help avoid these future ad hoc funding asks. I'd be happy to take any questions that council has.
Councillor Nielsen.
I move the City Council approves an unbudgeted expenditure of up to $30,000 to replace 3 variable frequency drives, commonly known as VFDs, at the Manluk Center to be funded from the Facility Lifecycle Asset Management Reserve.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Given that I'm not technically literate, Are all these VFDs the same, or are they all different? So for example, I guess what I'm leading to is if we pull one out that's operating, but it's at end of use, do we pitch it in the garbage, or do we hang on to it as a possible backup? Like, are they all transferable from unit to unit?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the way that I understand it is you can definitely swap them between. It just depends. I believe it's basically the size of what it's controlling, like the pump. So we do save, like if we take one out as a spare, that could be. But it's not a one size fits all exactly. Okay. It just depends, yeah.
Okay. And have all the VFDs been examined in terms of where they are towards end of life? Or do we just know by year that we're at that point?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, yeah, we are just basing it on the age of the equipment right now, but we are working to put together that plan so we have a better idea so we can replace over the next few years the worst ones to the least worst, et cetera, et cetera.
And I think my last question, and you may not be able to answer it, is so we've seen some failures, mechanical failures in our facility over the last couple of years, from the wave rider now to VFDs and so on. So what are we currently doing in anticipation of other potential mechanical failures?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we're definitely in need of an asset management plan. I know there has been talk about that, but I would have to defer to Kevin or Sue for further advice on that.
Thank you, Natasha.
Sure, thank you. Right now, we're currently looking at a number of electrical component issues in some of our other facilities because they were listed as a priority within the 2019 original plan. Manluk Center wasn't at that time listed as a priority, but we're finding out over the last year or two that probably should have been also included in the plan. So our focus will be over the next couple of years as well to look at electrical components within Manluk. We have got 1 or 2 reports of electrical components in Manluk, but right now it's currently focused just on the electrical panels, not on the pumps and VFDs and other components like that. So that's part of the plan going forward. It wasn't included in previous plans.
Thank you. And when we did the facility overview of all our different facilities, and Manluk was not included, pardon me, if we were to have that done, would they be looking at all the mechanical components that we are sort of unable to sort of look at and say, gee, we better check this one out? So would a company come in and actually look at the full scope of our mechanical operation and say, in the next 3 years you need this and this, much like we've seen in the other capital facility plans?
Through the chair to council, we've actually had a company came in and did a review of counting the total number of components that we have for pumps and drives and those types of things, and put forward a quote saying we can look after them for you for this price, which was a little bit larger than we had anticipated. But even they don't physically go through each component. They base all the component life cycle replacement based on age. So it's only the kind of things that they can maybe trace with a heat FLIR camera that would know if there's issues with that component. They would put draws on some electrical pieces of equipment to see if there's amperage, higher amperage draws than what is required, but they don't actually take it apart and look at it. They just put little things on it.
A lot of our response would be based on equipment failure then?
Life cycle analysis would be the biggest thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, there's a discrepancy from the report to the motion that's on the screen, because in the motion it says up to $20,000, and then in the report it says up to $30,000, and I just want to know what the correct amount is.
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz, I apologize. The correct ask is the 30,000. We had to update this report fairly last minute, so that was just something that was missed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. To Natasha, you had said that if this doesn't get passed, you have funding in the Manluk operation. So if you have money for maintenance and repairs, why would this come to council when you have funding available in your department?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco. So this was an emergency purchase, so it was not something that was planned for this year, and it was $9,100. So if it is funded through the operating budget, it just means that other maintenance that was planned, that facilities had earmarked for this year, may not happen.
So if I may ask, when you're doing your budget for the swimming pool, you don't allow certain for valves or, up to a certain percentage like that. We don't want you to come back when 10 light bulbs blow out, you say you don't have no funding for the light bulbs.
Through the chair to Councillor Branco, yes, this was a unique situation in that we were already going to come because the VFD for the red, like the Supreme water slide, had failed. So that was kind of what cued the ask. And then with the failure of the comp pool, and then knowing that the leisure pool could be next, it just became a larger ask than just purchasing from operating.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you for being proactive in the replacement of the VFDs as opposed to waiting for failure and having another pool closure, so I appreciate that. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Natasha or Kevin, the question that I sent forward was what would it cost to replace all of these valves? You said there are 40 of them?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, yeah, there's 40 that control the whole building, and 7 specifically that control the pools and the water slides and the features.
So if any more of those 7 go down, can these swimming pools still be operational? Or will we have to shut down?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, we would need to close whatever it is that was affected, because it is really not in the best interest to try and run anything without a VFD, because it's just wearing out your other equipment.
Okay, so no, I just was wondering is there a way we could be proactive and if they're all gonna die on us pretty quick, we need to replace them sooner rather than later, and we've had enough shutdowns in our pool already, so I just wondered if there was a way that we could do that, and that's probably a hard question for you to answer, but I realize it costs money to do that, but it's gonna cost us money to be shut down as well, so, and maybe we can't wait till next year when we shut down the pool.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, yes, so our plan is to put a plan together to replace the VFDs over the next couple of years. These ones that are mentioned in the report are obviously the most critical at this point, and then hopefully we can get to the others before they fail on us. But yeah, it is anyone's guess as to when that would happen, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, it's planned obsolescence, right? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Natasha.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Head of 11.1, Council Committee reports and attendance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that City Council accepts the Council Committee reports and attendance as information.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Would you like to highlight anything?
No, life is good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Councillor Nielsen?
Nope, life is good.
Councillor Aberley?
I concur with my colleagues.
We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 14.1, closed session to discuss items pertaining to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, Section 24, advice from officials. Looking for a motion to go into closed session, please. Councillor Nielsen, those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Looking for a motion to come out of closed session, please. Councillor Nielsen, those in favor? Carried, thank you. Heading into new business, we've got the Rural Renewal Program. I would like to add establish corporate processes and procedures, develop and formalize service levels, and a communication strategy coming out of Committee of the Whole. Councillor Elliott, what did you have for new business?
Me?
What did you have for new business?
A request to attend the Stronger Together conference in Edmonton.
Councillor Elliott's attendance at Stronger Together conference. Of course, absolutely. The first one is the Rural Renewal Program, so that would be 15.1. 15.2 would be to establish corporate processes and procedures, coming out of Committee of the Whole. (15.3) would develop and formalize service levels. 15.4 would be communication strategy. 15.5 would be Councillor Elliott's attendance at the Stronger Together conference. Councillor Blatz, did you have one for the urban forest? And 15.6 would be urban forest sustainability policy. Is anyone not okay with approving the new business amended agenda altogether, or do we need to go through it one at a time? We'll give it a shot. So we're going to approve new business all in one shot for all 6 items. Those in favor? Opposed? Perfect. Councillor Nielsen, thank you. 15.1, Rural Renewal Program. Welcome, Vern.
Good morning, Council. In February 2023, this council was approached by a business owner requesting that the city pursue designation under the province's Rural Renewal Stream program, allowing employers to seek international workforce when local candidates were not available. As we know, the challenge of workforce is one faced by employers across many industries, and so we proceeded to submit an application to the province and were approved in August of 2023. At that time, when we initiated this program, we had communicated a goal to fill 85 job vacancies posted by 18 employers. I'm pleased to say that we have exceeded that mark. In fact, we're at a point now where we have reached about 300% success in filling jobs. So since August 2023, we've now processed, as of this morning, 253 community endorsements, supporting 86 local businesses. This has been tremendously impactful for businesses, and we know that of those 253 applications that have been submitted, there are at least 121 people who are already living and working in the community, which I know has been a sensitive topic for this council from the time that I arrived here 2 years ago. So while the success has been great and the impact has been felt very positively by the employers in the community, The workload now administratively to administer this program has become almost unmanageable. In processing those 253 endorsements, this has involved in excess of 1,900 emails, phone calls, voicemails, and meetings, both scheduled and unscheduled, that have taken away economic development's ability to perform the majority of the functions that we do. What I'm proposing, and what we're seeing is the stresses are being felt in other communities as well, where the communities of Olds, the Sylvan Lake, and Grand Prairie have either suspended their program for a period of time or have outright shut down the program because it's become too much work. And when other communities do that, it not only increases the appeal of Wetaskiwin, it also increases the demand of work as we administer this portfolio. Adding to some of the challenges are when we get incomplete or incorrect information from employers on these applications, so they take longer to process. There has been some inconsistency in where the employers are advertising their jobs. They're required to advertise them through public platforms, but some of these are not standardized, and so we are seeing applications come for positions that have been advertised on platforms that I've never heard of, which may contribute to why they can't find local candidates for these jobs. So we'd like to standardize some of those processes, identify a more streamlined approach for businesses when they're seeking endorsement. And I think that there may also need to be a requirement for us to explore fees for employers that are requesting reissue of letters that aren't due to a clerical error on the part of the city, but due to information that they have submitted incorrectly or incompletely. So what I would like to request of council right now is a pause of the program for the months of July and August while we reassess how we can more effectively administer this effectively, and have a motion to bring forward to council in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz.
I move that City Council approves to pause the application process for the rural renewal program until September 2024.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Vern, when was your first application processed?
Our designation got published on August 23rd, 2024, and we had applications that day.
2023.
2023, yes,
Okay.
sorry.
So in less than a year, this rural renewal program has, we've seen a 1% growth in population in less than a year through this program and the work that you've done.
Already, yes.
I totally understand the need to pause the program, given the workload that goes along with it. I don't know if as an amendment or a subsequent motion, ask for the economic impact that this program has brought to Wetaskiwin in terms of population growth and the workforce growth that has gone along with that, to create a business plan for our budget coming up for 2025, to try to take as much of that work off your plate as we can, so that we can continue with the program as well as the work that you're doing with economic development as well. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Vern. So Vern, you said 121?
That is correct.
And have these people found housing in Wetaskiwin?
They have, and actually, I was very, I'd say, I've been very concerned about the success or failure of this program, as it falls solely on our office. So as we've tracked the employers and the positions that they're hiring for, we've also been very diligent to track the registered addresses of the applicants that are coming to the community for the integrity of the program as well. And so we know that there are 121 people that have found homes in Wetaskiwin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've also had the opportunity to speak to some of the applicants that you've helped process and sing your praises and tell them what a life-changing opportunity it's been for them, and can't say enough good things about you, so I appreciate that too for the work that you're doing within our community. Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 15.2, establish a corporate process and procedure. Sue, that came out of the corporate business plan. Do you want to speak to that, please?
Sure. So this was a business case that was submitted to council during the last budget process, and we would need consulting help to complete this work. And I know the discussion during budget was these are things that we should be doing internally, and while we certainly can, it would take us away from the base business that we're doing right now. And so we would be asking to bring up that business case again and get that funded. And I was planning to bring it to the July 22nd meeting, so I didn't have it with me, but I believe it was $25,000 that we were looking for to get the help with that process.
So a couple of the things that we're working on, or that administration would like to work on through this corporate business plan, is to help streamline the work that we're doing now and creating creating an opportunity for the city to do things better in terms of what they're currently working on. And I think through council we can support that, and we hear back from the community that things are missed or overlooked or aren't done maybe as best as they could. And I think it's council's opportunity to empower our administration in terms of how to do better with what we have. And I'd like to continue on with that, as well as making sure that moving forward through our budgeting process that these are also taken care of. We will. I haven't decided if I'm going to make the motion now, if Sue's bringing it back to the July 22nd meeting. Does that change the timeline for the work that's being done? Would it make a difference if we had a motion and gave council or gave administration direction now, or if it was better at the July 22nd meeting?
We should be fine at the July 22nd meeting. The only one that is of more urgency is the communication one, but given the discussion today, until we get the service levels of communications in front of council, it sounds like that's the timely one. So the other ones certainly could move to the July 22nd without hindering our progress.
Do you need a motion from this agenda item? Can it be accepted as information and that satisfies your agenda process?
Council directing administration to bring it to the new...
No, it was already in there. They were already going to bring it back, so there's no direction from council.
Then it should be back.
Okay, so we don't need a motion? Okay. Then 15.3 of developing and formalizing service levels. There was no... So there was no change, there was no request for funding on this. And what would the timeline be for that?
Through the chair to council, this one actually might do really well as a direction to change. So I have the money in my current budget, but I told you it was for something different. And if you approve the switch of that funding to service level inventory, we would get our contractor immediately to work on the communications one so that we could make sure it's finalized for the July 22nd meeting. And then we would work on everything else, and she is confident that she can get it all done with about 4 months for the entire city, any of the missing gaps. So we would be able to have that conversation with council around budget time.
So if I gave you 5 minutes now, could you draft a motion to start that?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the motion that our ledge team will be bringing up is to redirect the corporate strategic planning allocated funding to the service level inventory. As soon as she gets that typed in, we'll get that up for you.
So I move that City Council approves funding change from corporate strategic planning to level of service inventory. I'll open it up to discussion. Yep, go ahead.
The timeline for that, concluding that activity would be what?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the communications would be our highest priority and would be back by the July 22nd meeting. And then any other gaps within the organization, when I spoke with the contractor last week, she said it would take about 4 months. So we should have everything back prior to budget deliberations.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler DeSouza. So we're just changing the funding. We have the funding there.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, that is correct.
Thank you.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So then can I take communication strategy out of, okay, so we'll strike 15.4. 15.5, Councillor Elliott's attendance at the Stronger Together conference, and I'll let you speak to that.
I did submit the motion to staff. Mr. Mayor, the annual conference for libraries is called the Stronger Together Conference, and it is October 3rd and 4th in Edmonton this year. And it's a number of different regional library systems getting together and holding a conference, which I found it to be one of the best conferences that I go to. It used to be in Jasper, and because of economy and everything else, a number of libraries weren't able to go, so now it's going to be in Edmonton, and yes, I would just like to attend this conference.
Thank you. Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, approximate cost related to this event?
2 nights accommodation registration fee.
A couple thousand?
Oh, I don't think so. 1,000?
Okay, thank you.
Did you say 12,000?
No. I was going to make a motion to give him 12,000 for us. I said no.
To go to Florida?
Somebody want to make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. I move that City Council approves per diems, travel, and accommodation for Councillor Elliott to attend the Library Stronger Together Conference, October 3rd and 4th in Edmonton, Alberta.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And 15.6, Urban Forest Sustainability. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. So I'm bringing back the motion that we couldn't make because it was in committee of the whole. So I move that City Council directs administration to bring the Urban Forest Sustainability Policy to the July 22nd, 2024 regular council meeting for approval, and I have some follow-up comments.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Go ahead.
I have some concerns with being told that it's aspirational. To me, this is a priority. I'm not sure how the rest of council feels, but to me, this is something that's incredibly important to our community. And if we don't take tree planting or tree care seriously, I feel like there could be some major cost implications in the future, as well as what our city looks like. And so when this comes back, I would just, anything that seems out of reach or that we can't do, having some options coming forward of what that could look like for changes, or giving us some more information about what we need in order to make these things happen would be really appreciated.
Councillor Aberley?
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I am in agreement with Councillor Blatz, and that was directed somewhat towards my questions. I have had a lot of citizens complaining to me about the trees that are coming down and what our intentions, are for maintaining that. So, saying too, and that was my question too, too ambitious doesn't give me a understanding of what I'm agreeing to, and so that's where I was asking the questions of, is a 20%, like I know that we'd strive for 30, but we will fulfill 20. The wording of 1-to-1, at least 1-to-1, things like that, or things that if there is re-talking, that will be discussions I'm bringing up again in July. Thank you.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Anything else from administration? Meeting adjourned at 12:06. Thank you, everyone.
So what is the